There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from saying yes when every part of you wanted to say no. You agreed to the favor. You showed up to the dinner. You covered the extra shift. And now, alone in the quiet, you feel something strange. A heaviness you can't quite name. Most people call this being nice. Psychologists call it something very different. Because underneath the politeness, underneath the smile, there is a quiet mechanism working overtime, and it was installed a long time before you ever noticed it. So why does a single word, no, feel almost impossible to say? And why does saying it, even when you're right, leave you feeling like you did something wrong? To understand this, we have to go back, not to a moment, but to a pattern. A pattern most people don't even realize they're living inside. Somewhere in childhood, most guilt-prone people learned an unspoken rule. Love is something you earn by being useful. Maybe you were praised for being the easy one, the helpful one, the child who never caused problems. And somewhere, quietly, your brain made a deal. If I disappear a little, I get to stay. If I make things easier for them, I am safe. Psychologists call this a fawn response. It's not a personality. It's a survival strategy, one of the nervous system's oldest tricks. When a young mind can't fight and can't run, it learns to please. And that wiring doesn't disappear when you grow up. It just gets better at hiding. But that's only part of the story. Because guilt, as strange as it sounds, isn't always about the other person. Often it's about a version of yourself you're afraid to meet. The version who has boundaries. The version who disappoints people. The version who is, for a moment, not universally liked. For someone raised to equate approval with safety, that version feels dangerous. Almost like a stranger wearing your face. So when someone asks for something and you feel that no rising in your throat, it's not just a word you're holding back, it's an entire identity. Neuroscience has an interesting way of describing what happens next. When you consider saying no, the same brain regions involved in physical pain quietly light up. Social rejection isn't a metaphor to your nervous system. It's a threat. That's why your heart races before a difficult message. Why your stomach tightens before a hard conversation. Your body isn't overreacting. It's remembering. But here's where psychology discovers something even stranger. The guilt you feel after saying no is often louder than the guilt you'd feel from saying yes, even when yes is the one quietly destroying you. This is called anticipatory guilt. Your mind rehearses the other person's disappointment before it ever happens, and then punishes you for a crime you haven't committed yet. Meanwhile, the other person may have already moved on, asked someone else, forgotten they even asked. But inside you, the imagined reaction keeps replaying. Psychologists call this rumination. The default mode network, the part of the brain that activates when you're not focused on anything, turns your quiet moments into courtrooms, and you become both the defendant and the judge, prosecuting yourself with evidence no one else would ever accept. But the real reason is much deeper. Guilt, at its core, is a social emotion. It evolved to keep groups together. In a world where being cast out meant not surviving, guilt was a kind of glue. The problem is your ancient brain still thinks disappointing your coworker is the same as being exiled from the tribe. It doesn't know the difference between a text left on read and a life or death moment. To your nervous system, they can feel almost identical. Most people never realize what happens next. The more you say yes to avoid guilt, the more your identity quietly shrinks. Not in a dramatic way, in small, invisible ways. A hobby you stop mentioning, an opinion you soften, a preference you pretend not to have, a version of yourself you keep politely in the drawer. Behavioral psychologists call this self-erasure. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates, one small yes at a time. Until one day, you look at your life and realize almost none of it was chosen, only agreed to. And that realization brings its own kind of grief, quiet, delayed, and difficult to name. But here's what most people miss. Guilt in itself isn't the enemy. It's a signal. The question is, whose voice is it actually carrying? Sometimes the guilt is yours, an honest signal that you crossed a value you actually hold. But often, it's not yours at all. It's the echo of a parent, a culture, a role you were handed before you could refuse it. Learning to tell those two apart may be one of the most quietly radical things a person can do. Because the goal was never to stop caring about people. It was to stop abandoning yourself in the process. Real kindness doesn't require self-erasure. It requires a self present enough to actually give. And the first time you say a calm, clear no, without over-explaining, without spiraling, without apologizing 5 times, something quiet shifts. The world doesn't end. The relationship doesn't shatter. And you meet, maybe for the first time, the version of yourself you were afraid of. And she's not a stranger. She's the one who was waiting the whole time. So maybe the question isn't why saying no feels so hard. Maybe it's this: who taught you that your comfort was less important than everyone else's convenience? Take a moment before you scroll away. If this touched something in you, share it in the comments. Sometimes naming a feeling out loud is the first small no to the silence it grew in. If videos like this feel like they were made for the quieter parts of your mind, consider subscribing. There's more waiting for you. Next, we'll explore why the people who overthink the most are often the ones who feel the least understood, and what your mind is actually trying to protect you from. Until then, be gentle with the part of you that's still learning. It's allowed to take up space.